All right, so this is Ode Osbourne's really nice left hook against Luis Gurule. We're going to be looking at a couple of things with Ode Osbourne's movement, and then we're going to take a look and see what's happening at the neck whenever Luis Gurule gets hit. This is going to be a little bit less edited because I like to get these out recently, or after recent fights like this, I like to get them out quickly. So as always, we're going to start from the ground. Since he's moving backwards, this is a little atypical. The center of mass is moving backwards with this setup here. It's a really good display of his fight IQ, but again, it's just a little bit atypical of what we see from these knockout blows. So as he's moving backwards, in order to counteract that center of mass moving backwards, he plants rapidly with his right foot on the ground and goes into, it's a really nice display of hip closed chain internal rotation. So as he plants, along with that lumbopelvic rotation moving about the hip joint, a lot of hip internal rotation there. Okay, so really good display of that first of all. But now let's kind of look at his trunk in a more of like a global sense, look at his trunk. Typically, and this is a pretty good example of it here, we see that hip and shoulder separation. So we see his hips are facing the tequila sign there, and then we see his shoulders are kind of facing the ESPN side. So the planes of the hip and the shoulder are separated. This is typical whenever we're looking at lead hooks. But whenever we see somebody kind of, not necessarily hovering, but like floating backwards to set something up, the biomechanics are a little bit different. So this time his hips actually shift in mid-air. So as he's moving, really good display of athleticism there. As he's moving backwards after he throws the right, his hips are already facing Luis, and his shoulders are still kind of lagged behind. So he's still getting that stretch reflex a little bit. And so in this case, since the external oblique on the left is involved with contralateral movement, meaning rotational movement to the right, the hips shift to the right, but the shoulders kind of stay behind. So this means there's a big stretch put on that external oblique, and then he concentrically contracts it, or shortening after the lengthening, for a more powerful punch to the face. Along with, obviously, we've got the pec major and the anterior delt, and then a smaller muscle like the coracobrachialis that are involved in shoulder horizontal adduction that we're seeing here to complete the strike. So really good display of kinesthetic awareness and athleticism along with fight IQ for this knockout. So now let's look at actually what's happening at Luis Gurule's neck here to potentially kind of explain what is causing this acute loss of consciousness that we call knockouts. So in milliseconds, it goes from neutral to about 90 degrees of cervical rotation, and then it kind of whips back out. That movement, that rapid acceleration, deceleration, and then whip back out of that position, that left cervical rotation, is something that's happening there called mechanoporation. This is what we think is happening whenever people acutely have that loss of consciousness. We think there's a big tension on the nervous system, or the axon that's responsible for transmitting signals from different parts of the neuron to other parts of the neuron. And so whenever that happens on a global scale, so whenever that happens in multiple axons of multiple neurons, it's thought that this kind of impedes the signal transmission and causes that acute loss of consciousness. So that's just a really good display of that kind of theoretical model kind of showing itself in a real live fight. So really good stuff. Thank you guys for watching. If you like it, let me know with the comments, and I'll see you next time.